There will be suffering and setbacks, but I can promise you this: America will be with you every step of the way, as a partner, as a friend. Opportunity won't come from any other place, though. It must come from the decisions all of you make, the things that you do, the hope that you hold in your heart. Ghana, freedom is your inheritance. Now it is your responsibility to build upon freedom's foundation. And if you do, we will look back years from now to places like Accra and say, this was the time when the promise was realized. This moment when prosperity was forged, when pain was overcome, and a new era of progress began. This can be the time when we witness the triumph of justice once more. Yes, we can. Thank you very much. God bless you. Thank you.
So there you have it, President Barack Obama making that address there at the International Conference Centre in Accra to Ghanaian parliamentarians. And he spoke for about, let's see, about 35, 36 minutes in a speech which emphasised the political much more than the economic. And of course, that was always the reason why he came to Ghana. And you can see, obviously, a very, very warm reception there, standing ovation. He's shaking hands there with John Atta Mills and the Speaker of the Ghanaian Parliament. Let's hear what Mrs. Joyce Adeline Bamford Adu has to say in response.
Of this august House, I convey our utmost gratitude for your message. Mr. President, the House wishes you God's guidance and good health as you leave our shores. Mr. President, but come again soon. Long live Ghana, long live United States of America, long live Africa.
Okay, the Speaker there of the Ghanaian Parliament.
Honourable members.
He touched on an awful lot of things, Barack Obama. There was nothing he didn't talk about. Climate change, a lot about young people being the future of the continent. He touched on conflicts, trade, investment, aid. Now, I've got a number of guests with me who were listening very closely to that speech. Jibril Fall, the chairman of the Africa Foundation for Development, which looks at business development in Africa, and also the American author and playwright Bonnie Greer, who's originally from Chicago, Barack and Michelle Obama's hometown. Olara Otunu, former Ugandan foreign minister, also former assistant UN Secretary General in New York, was listening to that. And we may be able to go to the continent of Africa itself and talk to Johannesburg. So let me just get some reaction from my guests here. Bonnie, you kick off. What did you think?
You know, at first I thought, he's speaking to the American people primarily. There were a lot of things I thought were a little bit sort of basic. But then he started to become elegant as he started to talk about the continent specifically, specific things, warfare, children's war especially, the AIDS. I thought he was quite gracious, actually, in mentioning George Bush's contribution in the fight against HIV/AIDS. It's very important for African Americans to hear that. And so I think in the end, it was an extremely important speech. I think probably his most important as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, I'll come back to you on one or two of the things that you said. Jibril, what did you think?
I think he didn't pull any punches. He did discuss the difficult issues that Africa needs to discuss. He started very early on in his speech with the isms that have bedeviled Africa. He talked about nepotism, tribalism, but he personalized it, linking it to his heritage, his father in Kenya. So in a way, as Desmond Tutu said earlier, it's about sort of a son of Africa in this sense, talking to brothers and sisters and saying, let's deal with these issues. Around the end, we saw the sort of the finesse of his rhetorical powers in which he draws back to Ghana's heritage politically from '57, the linkage with Martin Luther King.
Well, he brought together the elements of an agenda of what we sometimes call Africa's second independence, which is to say, redeeming the dreams which had fueled the original fight for African independence, but the dreams which got lost along the way. So the fight for democracy, against corruption, good governance. And I thought the most important part of the speech was when he said, history is on the side of these brave Africans. Now we want to see that the U.S., for its part, will be on the side of those brave Africans, because unfortunately, as we know in the past, the U.S. has sometimes been on the wrong side of history and on the wrong side of the Africans. So President Obama's speech is saying, we shall be with the African people in their struggle for democracy, for good governance, against corruption and ethnic sectarianism. That's a good message.
All right, well, I wonder how that message is going down, in particular in southern Africa, of course, where you have the huge problems that we do in Zimbabwe. And joining us now from Johannesburg is CK Kasambala, who's a researcher for Human Rights Watch. CK, you're Zimbabwean, but you now work in South Africa. Did you like what Alara just mentioned about Barack Obama saying we stand with those brave people in Africa who are trying to take a stand against tyranny?
Indeed, it was quite commendable, and it was also interesting that he focused on the Zimbabwe Election Support Network, which came out in Zimbabwe during last year's elections and made it clear that Robert Mugabe had not won those elections outright and were the first to come out with the count, the electoral count. And as you may now know, there's a power-sharing government in Zimbabwe. And it was a good place to start on, especially in Ghana, where the ruling party conceded defeat and accepted the will of the people, unlike in places such as Zimbabwe and in Kenya.
And what else did you take away from the speech, CK?
I think another interesting point, apart from his emphasis on highlighting corruption and its effect on human rights, was the issue of sanctioning those who cause conflict on the continent. And this is a very important message to bring to Africa, because we know that last week or 2 weeks ago, the African Union heads of state, especially the state parties to the International Criminal Court, came out with a resolution stating that they would not cooperate with the ICC on the arrest of President al-Bashir of Sudan, which was a very worrying development. And we would hope that Ghana, as a state party, would show its commitment to the ICC and to international justice on the continent.
Bonnie Greer, you want to come in here?
Yes, I was struck and still feel very moved by the fact that this is the first president of the United States who's ever visited the continent of Africa who's not decorative, in a sense. We, all of us in the studio and the speakers outside the studio, are children of that continent. And to have a son of that continent return as the most powerful human being on this earth and to make the things he's made, I think it's turned a page. I think history will say that a page has been turned. He spoke about the young people, and he spoke directly to them and said, you must challenge the whole sort of gerontology culture that runs so many of the nations of Africa. You must begin now to make that, and we will support you as African Americans, as Americans, as you begin to take on the future of your country.
I mean, Jibril, he was very much received as one of their own, a son of the soil. I mean, before he actually spoke, there were some horns, which I believe are a traditional Ghanaian way of welcoming the chief in their midst, the Akwaba welcome.
Indeed, he did get the traditional welcome. I don't know whether he's been created a chief yet.
I think Michelle's going to be made a queen, so maybe that's enough.
Ah, okay. Yes, indeed. But in terms of the point that Bonnie makes, it's very powerful, Barack going as effectively the son of Africa going back home. It brings home the other dimension of the African diaspora and the complex nature of the African diaspora. Traditionally, it's the transatlantic African diaspora, the African Americans. But since World War II, you have a new diaspora that is the father of Barack Obama, that is Africans being immigrants and first generation, second generation. All of us now form a big African diaspora all over the world. And that is to the great benefit to Africa, but Barack also touched on some of the difficulties, like the professionals trained in Ghana, medical professionals who leave and join the wider African
The brain
diaspora.
drain, which is huge in Africa, in particular in Ghana. OK, let's just get some reaction now from Accra itself. And the BBC's correspondent Andrew Harding has been listening to the speech in the Ghanaian capital, and Andrew now joins us live on the line. So, Andrew, how was it all received?
Well, I'm just outside the Parliament building, and there's been a lot of cheering from some of the shacks here where people have been crowded around tiny, aging black and white television sets to watch Mr. Obama's speech. It's gone down extremely well. This is a country that has been enormously proud to play host to Mr. Obama, and who refer to him as a brother endlessly. People say he's part of the family. They are expecting a great deal of him, and I think this speech, from what I can tell so far, has gone down very well.